As we are ready to go. Dave, do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
We do not.
All right then, we will move to item number 1, approval of meeting minutes for February 20th, 2023, which was tabled at the 3/2023 meeting, or sorry, yes, 23 meeting, and meeting minutes for March 20th, 2023. Has everyone read the meeting minutes, loves the meeting minutes, comments about the meeting minutes? Anyone?
They look good. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes.
Would that be for both meetings or one in particular?
Both
Okay.
meetings.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the meeting minutes for February 20th, 2023, which was tabled at the March 20th, 2023 meeting, and also approve the meeting minutes for March 20th, 2023. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving meeting minutes for February 20th, 2023 and meeting minutes for March 20th, 2023 say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve the meeting minutes of March 20th, 2023 and the meeting minutes for March 20th, 2023. I'd also like the record to show that Ryan Lundeen has joined us and voted aye for that last item. There is no financial report for this month. And we are going to jump to consideration and possible action in item number 2, consideration and possible action on purchasing up to 15 additional signs for the QR code historic walking tour. Dave?
Directors, you may recall those. You guys were involved with those. I wasn't involved in the first one, but the city has purchased these, or the EDC has purchased these before, did a pilot project on them. I think purchased about 6 signs. Several are up around the homes now. We have a couple examples there, and the request is to purchase up to 15 additional signs for a total of $1,125.
So we had the data from the QR codes, which we have about a couple of months getting hit, but definitely during the 7th grade project, there were 90 or so on each sign. So there's high use at certain times, not so much at other times on these. But it definitely does a good job of replacing some of the physical literature that the MEDC had paid for at much higher expense. Thoughts, questions, comments? Brian, how do you feel about it, since one of these pictures is of your house, if you don't mind me outing you?
I think they're a good resource. I think the kids use them for their tours, so I think it's helpful. So I think they're good.
And you just attached it to your fence?
The city asked me where I wanted it to be placed, and then they did it at their expense. So.
Oh, really?
And the opposite happened at Magnolia House. He actually had a specific place that he wanted it, and he built the pole and had the light attached to the top, so that was at his expense because he had something very specific in mind that he wanted.
Yeah.
It is very fancy looking.
It's a good plan.
So we have 15 homes
So there are
that
30,
we're putting this at?
there are 30 total buildings that are on the tour. So this would cover, with the ones that we already have, about 2/3 of them. Not each. Fernland is one by itself. It doesn't have a separate one for each building in Fernland. And 15 would allow for the possibility that not everyone on the tour wishes to have something like this at their place.
Can I move?
Yeah.
I'd like to move to purchase up to 15 additional signs for the QR code historic walking tour.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded that we purchase up to 15 additional signs for the QR code historic walking tour. This motion is debatable and amendable and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of purchasing up to 15 additional signs for the QR code historic walking tour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously, and we will purchase up to 15 additional signs for the QR code historic walking tour. Item number 3, consideration and possible action on a professional services agreement for engineering consulting services between the MEDC and Civil Systems Engineering Incorporated. Dave?
Directors, you see the draft agreement in front of you. The EDC has talked about this for the last couple of months. We, at the last meeting, talked about the idea of RFQing out for services. In subsequent conversations with Becky, we felt like the draft of this agreement or, was, what she wanted to bring to the agenda, so.
And I think it also came up at the joint meeting with MEDC MEDC Planning and Zoning and City Council that we needed to, as Jeff said, speak to TxDOT in their love language, which was fact and data, and have ready to go projects that met their specific criteria, and also other entities to whom we might be able to present or receive either grant funding or other types of funding from.
How many projects would this engineering company be working on?
I think it's up to us really to determine what we need. I think right from the
So
start.
we don't have a agenda for them to get started on?
I think that we would need to start that right from scratch. My preference would be to have a presentation a general presentation on our transportation mobility needs, as well as our demographic projections and the information that we already do have based on recent car counts and mobility information.
And the main reason we're not using the city engineers is because they're too busy?
I think it's a good idea to have somebody who's working specifically for us rather than getting in line behind city priorities.
Who is going to give them the guidance, and who's going to make sure that they're doing what we've asked them to do? Do they just come every month and give a report, you think, of what they're
I think it would
doing?
probably be best for us to set a deliverable and then them deliver and us to judge it.
So that deliverable is not contained in this agreement as of yet? Okay.
No, because we won't, it's an as needed, so they don't just get money up front. It's we set the agenda and then.
This is just a not to exceed number, okay.
I've got, just so we know, conversations with Mr. Palmer, also our own Chris and engineering teams. I may have mentioned Dave in passing. Jeff, we had a conversation the other day regarding the need for some sort of transportation advisory. I think pulling this all together, we need a transportation advisory team of sorts that focuses on communications, excellent communications with TxDOT, county commissioners, and whatever is involved,
Right.
and to give some oversight. As we know, our staff is way stretched, and so there are some very valuable assets in and around. Some of them are sitting here that could be part of that oversight committee, sort of a subcommittee, if you will. But I'll need to run it by in a workshop here next week or the week after, as soon as possible, through the new council, because what we need to do is create buy-in. Good intercommunications between planning and zoning, economic, and the city council themselves will help create buy-in. And also understanding, if I'm understanding Chris, from a conversation earlier today, people need to understand that the old Gunda quiddity is about to, or that Gunda is phased out. Two different groups, but one of those groups is phased out.
So Gunda is Ardura, which is where Lori and Kyle came from. Quiddity was Jones and Carter. Jones and Carter became
And they're not
Quiddity,
involved in this
which
regard.
they're not involved in any downtown projects. They're just involved with finishing out the 2 open grant projects that ideally both of those will be on council within the next 30
Okay,
days.
so toward that end, what we have is questions about, we've studied, we've paid thousands of dollars for this and thousands of dollars of that, and we need to see the fruit as soon as possible. And I think, Chris, you agree as well, that good communication, sort of the effect that maybe a tort committee would have in overseeing or kind of checks and balances on water, the same type of idea with transportation, because you can't make good decisions on McCown, for example, without also considering, and that's part of our agenda as well, parking and traffic flow. And so I had a conversation, for example, on law enforcement. And we have Officer Hernandez, I think, that deals with TxDOT and brings in grants. He would be an ideal person to put on there. But I would need to run this through the council and get their input, and would certainly entertain anybody here today or in the community that feels like I need to go talk to somebody, and that's the thing. So I do know somebody who has state connections at TxDOT. It bode well for that traffic light happening. Once you made a connection to somebody who had state connections at TxDOT, who also had connections to energy, they started talking and things started getting done. Well, I think I can put a committee together of people who are on that, maybe take a little pressure off of the staff to do that. And so what we call it might be a transportation advisory team, or if somebody has something better, you know, we can certainly do that. But that's kind of where
We're
I'm
saying
at.
that in conjunction with this, or?
No,
to replace this?
Not to replace this. We're no engineers, but I can get somebody who has engineer on this team.
Some of us are.
Brian,
Busy
in terms
engineer.
of, you know, water litigation is one of them, so you're a factor. Jeff is sitting there as a business owner. Wade's not here, but he's a developer. So we have some people that might form a subcommittee of sorts, yeah, I guess is what I'm saying, to help make sure that we're all on the same page and moving forward.
So this group, Civil Systems Engineer, are they represented here at all?
Yeah, it's Lori and Kyle that we know from,
Oh, yeah.
So I
okay.
remember her.
yes.
Yeah,
For sure.
we both transferred over to Civil Systems within the last few weeks.
Okay.
Oh, look at you jumping ship. Is it a good ship to jump over to?
Oh, I hope so.
Their own chip.
All right, so what qualifications do you guys have to, you know, get in TxDOT's proverbial ear?
So Kyle's been doing transportation work for well over 30, 40 years. He's been involved in it. He's been project manager on multiple TxDOT projects across the state, across their districts. So he also knows personally a lot of people in the Houston district, which is the district that we're in. So
Good, so he knows
He's
folks.
got the contacts, and we've also, when we were doing the downtown plan, the roundabout that was considered, the parking, we got everybody to the table, or he personally got them to the table, so we could have those discussions between city staff, the EDC, the mayor at the time, and us, to make sure we were
Good.
capturing everybody's ideas, to make sure we were going in the right direction.
Well, it's nice to work with familiar faces. You know, we've seen you quite a bit over the last couple of years.
And Kyle was also the one who got the no, you can't have your bricks on the TxDOT 105 project when it was stalled and nothing was happening and we were still getting the stiff arm. Kyle was the one that got
That's
them
good.
to relent and
Okay.
upgrade that by talking to the right people on our behalf.
I was lamenting to Mayor over here about just outside of our city over here. I just glanced away for just a second and went from a white line to a white brick wall and did $4,000 worth of damage to my truck. I don't want to repeat that for the rest of our citizens in this area. This is one of the, I don't even know how to describe crazy, but it doesn't seem to be that it's doing. You got fire stations that are blocked, they can't even get to the left side of the road. I mean, this was not well thought out.
See, that's one of the things that I got that in mind, because
Okay.
our speed limit's 35. We'll have a controlled intersection at Buffalo Springs. I see no reason to come in here and do what was on the east side to our town. And if it's on the curb, one of those pictures with all the flags and stuff, to me, that's a nightmare waiting to happen. And I want to make sure, but I mean, that's not me. That's gathering input for everybody, you know.
Well, yeah,
Businesses included.
it better be functional and safe than pretty and dangerous.
Right.
So, yeah, no, we just got to get going because we know how long it takes to get on their agenda. So the sooner the better.
And having representation that already has the ear and a good working relationship is, I think, an important part of getting our viewpoint across, whether or not we get, you know, any of the money that we're also hoping to get in terms of grants and that kind of thing. But it does matter for some of these other
100%.
issues.
Agreed. Yeah.
Even if it's only pretty bricks, it does make those intersections or those medians easier to see.
Okay.
Well, and our vision is a little bit different than what they have for our vision too, so
absolutely.
we want to try to.
We need to
Let's
start
bring it
talking
in.
early
Yeah.
and often
Yep.
and politely as well. I think, you know, not being desperate or angry, but having, you know, conversations early on, again, using their love language, thank you, Jeff, is the way to get our point across.
Okay, good.
It doesn't seem odd to use two different engineers for the same city. It seems like there's a lot of inefficiency there.
I actually don't, because I do feel in some ways we have not a different priority from city council, but in some ways we do. I think we're looking much further ahead on an issue that hasn't necessarily captured the interest of city council. Because we have people who tend to be more business oriented with a viewpoint that might have a longer horizon than city council that's looking at things like, you know, I don't want to say more mundane, but water connections and things like that, that, you know, we're not really asked to look at. So, you know, the city's engineer is going to be focused on the city's priorities, not our priorities. So we're always going to be below that.
But MEDC is under the city.
We are.
So if they're working for the city, then they need to be working for MEDC also.
No.
So I don't understand why
Their priorities are hierarchical. So the city, if they only have a capacity of X, they're going to put the city's priorities ahead of the MEDC's priorities in terms of urgency. So
I understand that,
even if we
but
feel our urgency is here,
they're still working on MEDC projects.
maybe, but that's not how it's been in the past. If they haven't necessarily had the time to complete everything at the same time, so things get prioritized and ours is not necessarily on top.
Well, when is the list and all of that going to get ready for those engineers when y'all are talking about we need to go immediately?
You're talking about the scope.
So
Carol,
what, I want to know
when the scope of the
Yes.
project is.
I want to know what they're going to be doing, when they're going to do it, and how are they going to get back with all of us to let us know how it's going.
Get some accountability.
And we've got to give them that scope to
That's
begin
right.
with, so they'll know
So
where to start.
when does that come about?
So what would you feel comfortable with?
Did we not have anything for tonight to give them? Or are we going to do it the next meeting for MEDC?
I thought weren't we going to try to collaborate like?
I missed the meeting, so I've only read the minutes.
Oh, that's what it.
So I'm not,
No, I think we're going to collaborate with another special session with all the council and PTC, MEDC. We're going to get together, we're going to
Okay.
define our scope, and then we're
Right.
going to present it. This was
and
the first step.
this
just to find
workshop
some-
is when?
Pardon?
When is that workshop?
Did
Well,
we say we were
we're
trying
working
to?
on this summer.
Yeah.
We may have to have 2 or 3 of them this summer.
We may have to have 2 or 3 of them this summer,
Yeah,
but I
just
think
get going.
Okay.
the goal is to get it going sooner than later. I know we were
Right.
talking about maybe missing the MEDC third week meeting, but maybe doing something even before that in June where we can get everybody together and let's just define our
Right.
our priorities. You know, whiteboard them and decide what we're doing first,
Right.
second, third, and give them to the engineers and let them start working on TxDOT to see if we can't get some traction. Because these projects are long-term, maybe
Right.
outlasting our tenure in here. So we need to get going sooner than later.
Well, I don't want to hire a group and then not have anything for them for
Right.
3 months.
Right.
When we're saying the city engineer isn't moving fast enough on anything.
So we don't need to
So-
hire anybody just yet, do we? We just need to decide.
Well, that's
if
what
we're-
you're doing if you
I was gonna
accept
say, I
this.
feel like we've been putting this off for months and months.
Yeah.
What about, I think we could say that one of the things that we're going to need is documentation of where we are, the sort of current state and future state based on our demographics and future growth. You
We
know,
will-
how bad are
Becky,
things going to be? Why do we need bigger roads? Why do we need better intersections?
Right. At the last meeting, Becky, we said that our number one priority is a mobility plan.
Right.
Okay, so that's what we need right now. And I don't know what that looks like. I've never done one. Maybe Ryan knows. But I'm thinking if we'll just get that part started, because we talked about if you fail to plan to fail. If we just get the mobility plan together 5, 10, however many years, just get that started so that we can get on their agenda and start building the blocks to get to the end game that's going to be satisfying, all of us, basically, as citizens of the city. Is that what you're talking about, Carol? What are we doing? When are we doing it? And when are we going to hold them accountable to get it done, right?
Right.
Well, I think we have to set a target, we have to set a target. I mean, are we going to worry about the 2854 mobility issues, or are we going to worry about what's coming more to the west from where they've stopped their business?
I think,
what's the
Chris, we
number
have
one
a
priority?
mobility plan. How old is it?
That was so the city and Precinct 1 and Precinct 2 did a joint mobility study, and I believe it was wrapped up in 2017 timeframe.
Okay.
2016, 2017. So I think it's, that's 6-year-old data, 7-year-old data at this point. So taking that plan and having it updated to have a more recent plan, and also taking, when that plan was done, that was prior to the downtown improvements master plan that was put together with the roundabout and other things, trying to wrap all those in with MEDC's participation, because it was
That's good.
really just focused on intersection improvements of existing roads and then coordinating with the precincts on the mobility plan, the master thoroughfare plan.
So is that an acceptable first step then, updating our mobility plan?
Well, it's nice to know we already have something that's been developed, so we don't have to start from scratch. And then I think maybe letting the directors and PTZ at the very least, get together and work of course, we had 2 council members on MEDC to work together to try and define going forward, what the scope needs to look like, and by the time frame that we'd like to have it completed by, so that we can begin moving forward.
Lori, do you have a thought on how long it would take to update a mobility plan like that? Or have you seen our mobility plan?
No, I've worked on them before. It can take anywhere to 6 to 9 months. Right now, as we're going into summer months, schools are out, and that's part of, if you're going to do traffic counts, you can't do them until school's back in, because it's a major hit.
Can we ask them to stay in school for just a couple of months?
If you want every kid up here yelling at you.
We got things to do.
Yelling.
All right, okay, 6 to 9 months, just
Yeah,
even with one that's existing.
Yes, because if the data, if things change and evolve quickly,
Okay.
if the data is evaluated and there's holes in it or something else has come along since then, you have to account for those things, so it can take time. Because you want to look at it as a whole. You want to grab the county's plans and anybody else's adjacent that you're tying into, because they will affect you in the future.
And we absolutely can't do a mobility study without school being in session, since our traffic is so driven by MISD.
And the other thing that builds into it is your land use, your future land use for the community. That's a very important part for a mobility plan, so you know where your major connections and thoroughfares need to be, because you can plan it now, but if you don't know what your future land use is anticipated to be, you're not planning for your future, you're planning for now, which will put you 30 years behind.
Well, one thing's for sure, if we don't have a mobility plan, we're not going to be able to attract the developers that we need to get the infrastructure in place for them to feel comfortable. And so I think we need to get started sooner than later, maybe sooner.
Where are we on our land use plan? I know that P&Z has kind of tinkered with the idea of changing a little bit our zoning map. Are they totally set with where we are now? Is that?
Future land use plan is, we need to go back and, look at an update, after the summer. It's been several years, since it's been since 2019, 17, I think.
Okay, so about the same time that the mobility plan was done?
And you can do them concurrently. It's a good idea when you do major updates, your capital improvement plan, your capital infrastructure plan, anything like that, because they all are based on these group numbers. Your mobility affects it, your land use affects it, your population projections, and if you get all those plans kind of cohesive at the same time, you're not paying double or triple the amount to have those recalculated every time, because if you wait a year between your future land use plan and doing a capital improvement plan or infrastructure master plan, you have to update those numbers. But when you have good current numbers, that helps make it more efficient.
So are we doing this in the right order, getting the mobility plan first? is there anything we can be doing in the interim to try to move things
It sounds
along?
like if you're gonna work for your future land use plan, you need to kind of start there because that looks at your population growth. It starts with your basis, the existing land uses, the future land uses, your population growth for the area, what's expected to come in. It does start grabbing other areas, mobility as a minute, but then you can expand on it because you can take those numbers and flip them over to the next one.
Okay.
So it's a growing machine.
Yeah.
And they're called living documents for a reason. They
Right.
do affect you. If you don't keep them up to date, you can see if you even run 6 years out of cycle, because most plans are supposed to be updated in 5 years, you can actually do yourself a disservice in your client trying to catch up and staying ahead of the curve and knowing what you want and where you want it in your community.
I would encourage, Carol and I went to the Navasota meeting
Yeah.
Friday. Earlier this morning, I looked on and found a plan that incorporates everything she's saying, everything we're all saying. And it was started in 2010 with specific goals to reach. But like any plan, you have to go back and tweak it.
Yeah.
But it includes things that Gary and I have been saying about TIF. There's TIF agreements that are in place that get certain looks that you're looking for on McCowan in this case, because McCowan's where we said strategy. And I think we have enough, what we have, to go ahead and start moving
That's
on
good.
McCowan while we're doing this plan. Because these plans have very specific ways to get there. And in it is a lot of economic-driven partnerships with businesses and developers along the way. So I don't know how extensive a mobility study would need to be. I think we got a pretty good idea of putting our eyes on 2854. And if anybody has Charlie Riley's number, please call him for me, Sarah or somebody.
Ryan, you do this for a living.
3 weeks now, I can't get with him.
You give
But
us
anyway, we can see some of the things that are happening, put our eyes on it, and
Yeah.
know where that is without having to wait, I guess is my point. So it is concurrent. The mobility study and the desires to have R1, R2, R3 updated and the different types of developmental areas that we want to be able to designate, those plans need to be. And in the meantime, we need to get going. But the feeling that I have right here, and Becky's correct, that the goal of economic development and tourism is specific to this council, whereas the city council has a more broad stroke and leans more heavily on the big. So I do see that there's merit here, but there's a lot of indecision here that maybe the cart's before the horse a little bit. But we just had an election. People will be in different seats. There will be workshopping, and there will have to be workshopping in planning and zoning as well. We're going to have to get really busy at being free to have our ideas and stuff, and we will have that trilateral. I don't know how many we'll have. We may have to have 3 of them. But I'd like to bring some special people in who have businesses here, farms here, tech stock connections, and that sort. I'd like to bring them in those trilateral meetings and get some authority. Because once you get the authority at the state level, evidently, the people local, they have a tendency to listen better.
Yeah.
And so I know these people need to be as part of this little team that comes into our trilateral meetings and stays on top of things that, again, staff just simply doesn't have the time to do. They're overwhelmed.
Okay, so we got to have somebody. I was asking Ryan, since he has some expertise in the engineering side, does this seem logical to go at this pace and these steps?
I think I'm confused about what the ultimate goal is. I think last time we had this conversation, which led to the mobility study discussion, is that it's okay to have relationships with the county commissioners and HGAC and TxDOT, but without a plan in place,
Right.
what's the point? But is mobility the primary concern of the MEDC? And what do we mean by that? I mean, is it inner city downtown mobility? Is that sidewalks, or is that putting signals or expanding roads? I'm not really sure what our target is.
For
we
EDC,
keep bringing up 2854. That's Charlie Riley's
Yeah.
deal. That's not our deal. But
Okay.
and he's already done a mobility study for that road. And so I don't know. I mean, if that's our goal, then we just need to talk to Charlie Riley and see how we can, help with the connectivity and push that forward. But he's got his own connections, I assume, with TxDOT, to help push those projects forward. So I'm not really sure what the plan and what our goal is.
So we need to define what we really need with respect to what's under our purview, right? Before we start jumping out and,
And I know that the main, we like to focus on downtown Montgomery. We want to preserve that. That's the route. That's why people love to come. Part of the reason why people love to come to Montgomery is the small town feel. And so that's why we're doing things downtown. We're doing all these studies and projects downtown. So if we're looking outside of downtown, that's a different thing. Maybe, and I'm not sure what our desire is, what our goal is. There's Dave, didn't you submit for a grant for doing like not a mobility study, but like a sidewalk?
And active transportation plan, yes.
Yeah, active transportation plan. What was the result of that? Have you gotten
Made
any?
it to the second round, so our detailed applications are due on June the 5th.
Okay.
So right now I'm coordinating with GAC to get a tip inclusion letter, working on a resolution to bring to council next time to support planning.
Okay.
So, and again, it just kind of speaks to there's lots of pieces that go into an overall,
Yeah.
either a transportation plan or a mobility plan. There may be several plans that make up that sum total of what we talk about when we talk about mobility, because like you said, it means a lot of different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're trying to talk to TxDOT, what do we want to talk to them about, I guess? You know, we have our downtown plan. We know what we want to do on 149. We have an idea what we want to do on TxDOT through the downtown master plan. If there's specific needs like road widening or intersection improvements, then I think we need to have a different plan to update a previous plan that we've done so that we have a list of specific needs of improvements that we want around the city to help improve economic development. But I don't know I kind of see what we're trying, but it's hard for me to visualize what tangibly are we trying to get out of this. So.
we need scope and we need a deadline. And we really don't need a company until we got that, right? Because we can't even tell them what to do right now.
And I think if we are having trouble staying on top of what TxDOT's doing, that's a city staff issue. I don't think we need to hire an outside consultant to, keep in touch with what's going on in our city. So
does the city have plans to hire someone to stay on top of that? I mean, do we know, Byron, or?
No, there's no hiring there. This is all volunteer. So we can't hire anybody for that.
I mean, I don't think that a lot of this data would be available through all these major corporations that are moving out this way. They've done massive plans before they spend millions and millions of dollars. And then, of course, getting with Charlie Riley, too. I mean, in one of these workshops, maybe we could get all these people together. It'd be great to find out what they're going to do.
Or someone have
Because
lunch.
it's obvious
Someone have lunch with Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing obviously the downtown area is very important to us. But I mean, bottom line is somebody's going to have to start buying some land on the south side of town to divert this property, this traffic around to get it to the west side.
Of course, we do have not just one, but two significant pieces of property that are up for sale. And there's some things that could change that. But anyway, it all transitions into town, and the obvious thing is McCown's closing. If McCown is going to get closed, then the sidewalk thing and the whole plan fits together, right? And that's the direction we need. I think as far as this agenda item, we're not ready to do that.
No, yeah. I appreciate you putting this together though, Becky, because I know it's something we all want to do, but I think like Byron says, the cart's before the horse just a little bit. I think maybe we should, even if we have to discuss amongst ourselves in some sort of a side session or whatever, when and how we want this to be, the scope, and when we want it completed by, and who we want to be a part of getting that final answer so that we can give them something tangible when we hand it over, and everybody feels comfortable with it. This is a good start. Should we just table it for now, or?
We can do that if somebody wants to second Jeff's motion.
I second it.
It's been moved and tabled that moved and seconded that we table item number 3, consideration of possible action on a professional services agreement for engineering consulting services between the MEDC and Civil Systems Engineering Incorporated. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of tabling a professional services agreement for engineering consulting services between the MEDC and Civil Systems Engineering, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will table a professional services agreement for engineering consulting services between the MEDC and Civil Systems Engineering Incorporated. Item number 4, discussion on possible temporary parking solutions in and around downtown. Dave?
Directors, the board asked for this to be on the next agenda, so here it is. I've included a map of downtown if you guys would like to explore, potential temporary parking solutions or parking at all. I'd be happy to take the ideas and talk with staff about them and the consultants about them.
Is this because of me making the comment about turning the corner lot into a gravel lot or
I
something?
think right on the heels of that.
I can't remember who requested this.
I think it was a combination of you and Jeff. I think
Yeah.
when y'all were talking.
Well, we definitely need parking.
You don't have to do anything on this item. Again, you said you wanted it on the agenda, so.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, if there's a study that we need to have, maybe a parking study, because I think that's the biggest problem we have downtown is parking.
I think the downtown design plan
Design
identified the real
plan
problem is
has-
we
Yeah.
have plenty of parking, but
Yeah.
it's mostly private,
It's
so
just- yeah.
agreements between,
But there's some good
So how do we get that?
plans
How do
there.
we get that ball moving forward with developing these relationships with these private property owners to come up with agreements that, so we can use their parking, shared use parking, I guess? Is that, I kind of stalled there. It's like, hey, you need to partner.
Richard Tram had started that project, but
I
I
know
don't know
when,
that he got to go to very many, I know he came to Jim's and sat down with Mr. Ward and visited with him on the parking lot and everything. So I don't know how many other business owners he went to that had extra parking.
David, do we have any legacy agreements that we might be able to look at to get at least a starting place as to what's been acceptable in the past?
We have leases. We have one lease right now currently on a parking lot downtown. That's a little bit different in that I think what this would be more toward a shared, so the businesses understand these aren't, anybody come. This might be your, next door neighbor business who's full and is going to use your spots, and you're going to do the same for them next week. It's more about a shared parking as opposed to the city leasing a parking lot, for public parking as opposed to a business, who has, if we use some of the lots or the properties that are on the west side of 149, they've got the parking lots there in the back. The idea, at least in my mind, a shared parking agreement would allow those two businesses to share their parking in between them, as well as let, someone who was just, coming to visit downtown and might not be going to any business.
How do we compensate the businesses that have additional parking now, or have we compensated them in the past?
Right now, the agreement that we have is like $1 a year lease. It's,
$1 a year?
Yeah, a nominal value, and again, that's with the Jacobs lot there on the north end of Liberty. They're just on.
So do they own the property? I don't understand.
Jacobs does. He owns that parking lot.
but to be clear, that MEDC also paid to pave it, so
Right,
we did approve it.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about, let me just get it clear, this city comes in, paves it, puts the stripes or whatever, and then they lease it back to the owner?
No. The owner still owns it. He can still continue to park there. It's also used for city.
What happens if he sells the business?
Yeah, so we're never doing one of those again, as long as I'm on MEDC. You'll have to get rid of me before we ever engage in one of those.
Because that didn't work out so well last time.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we paved it and then lost it.
All right, so
We also leased the property from the telephone company on Pond Street, right?
That one's, almost nobody knows about that one.
Yeah,
I
but
think one of
there
the-
is a lease on it, and it's $1 a year, as
well,
far
maybe
as I
Maybe
remember.
that's not the 100% the correct approach then. And we can look at some more creative solutions, because I know as a business owner, I would never sign a $1 a year lease to allow for parking for events, because even for the paving, it's just not, there's not a lot of upside on that. So I think maybe if it was just a per use, per event, more looking at something along those lines. And if the improvements needed to be made to some degree, I don't know if you need to go all the way to paving, but maybe it's just, putting some kind of topper on it to make sure that it's stable or whatever. But the other thing is there's low-hanging fruit. Don't we have property already? The city owns property that we could, like Ryan said, improve just a bit to, the cost of that can't be anywhere near, complete soup to nuts paving. I've only paved a few times and it's not cheap. So what do you think, Dave? Do we have any low-hanging fruit where we can get people?
I do think that the conversation with the business owner to ask for some type of a shared use agreement necessarily has to start with the city finding ways to increase the amount of parking. In other words, to start the conversation, you start by saying, and here's what we've done. Not here's what we're going to do. Here's what we've done to add to the parking downtown. Now we're asking everybody to
kind of share the burden a little bit.
Well, to consider some type of an arrangement. If it doesn't make sense, then we can't.
Well, I can tell you from my perspective, they park there anyway, okay? So it's not like you can stop. You literally have to stand there and say, go down the street or put event sign parking this way, because they come in for every event anyway. And if we have a big event, a wedding or something along those lines at Hodgepodge, it could be catastrophic. Because you only have 7,500 spaces. So I think it's just important to be able to have maybe a more flexible agreement so people don't feel pigeonholed into that arrangement. So I see what you're saying, and I can certainly see where that is. If I'm talking about from a business owner's perspective, I would be hesitant to go along with that. But if it's a shared use for special events where it benefits everybody to have more people in the city, and you can still maybe make some remuneration off of that without having to go to the expense. I don't know what it costs to pave. It's got to be so much per foot though, right? Or per parking space or whatever. I'm sure we could probably have a budget that would help compensate for some of the parking. What do you think, Becky? Do you think there's a better way of doing this maybe that might be more well received?
Generally speaking, it's not the government's job to enrich private property owners. So I have a hard time doing that just so people can park cars close to where they need to. Again, the study identified that there are a lot of spaces. So it's just, the big problem is that people don't want to walk anywhere. And until that problem gets solved, you're always going to feel like there's a shortage of parking spaces, even if there is not.
Well, maybe.
We've got, another option is that MEDC could acquire property to put off-site parking on and increase mobility to that site through sidewalks. I think part of it is people just don't want to walk in the street. So if we improve walkability through, that, then we can provide the off-site parking for these events. So city's got a piece of property, we have a piece of property. Ours isn't really conducive for parking, but you could put a few lots on there temporarily. And they don't have to be concrete. If it's off-site temporary parking, they can be gravel. It doesn't have to be super expensive. So any thoughts on?
So you're opposed to a lease. What would be wrong with taking a vacant lot somewhere downtown and leasing that to where you at least have some kind of protection if you did come in and do topping over, not necessarily asphalt, do gravel or either milled asphalt?
None of our previous lawyer allowed us to enter into lease agreements that were very landowner friendly. And so, there was one where we...
Don't do it again.
I know, that would be the solution. If, we entered into a long-term leasehold, then that would be acceptable. And you could say, well, at the maximum, this would cost us $500 a year plus the lease term. Okay, I can afford to let that go.
Well, it could be a reprieve in taxes. You do an improvement on it, their taxes don't increase because you made their property better. But the thing is, if they do try to sell it, at least you've got an out to where you go, hey, this is our thing's 5 years, 6 years, whatever. You either buy us out of it or there's a penalty for that.
Right. The other thing is, from a development standpoint, do we really want Montgomery asphalted, or do we want it filled with additional shops to bring people to, dine and shop and stay in Montgomery?
Right. Well,
Where?
you get into hard surface too, then you start getting into mitigation and detention and everything else,
Right.
where if you just put rock out there, you can get away with about anything, so.
Right, I mean, because
Well, it's not talking
realistic,
like
well,
off-site parking that's walkable. I mean, there's places around Montgomery that's, if you put a sidewalk to it, people will probably be more likely to walk.
well,
Without a sidewalk, we're like, well, they don't want to walk in the street, so I get that.
but realistically, I mean, the Lutheran Church has a fabulous parking lot, and I've
Yeah, I
never
mentioned
seen
that
them.
before, what's up with
I've
that?
never seen them tow from there, and nobody ever parks there. I mean, they do have an unfriendly sign that says "Don't park," but you know, when we rented the facility for the quilt walk, you know, they seemed very amenable to working more closely with the city because you know they're good partners with the type of events that bring people, family-friendly events that, you know, to bring people to the city.
So can there be some type of agreement we can put in place with the church where they use it on their hours? It's always empty, I live there, it's always empty except for Sundays, obviously, so.
But again,
The
it's
city can use it
it's
for.
too far away.
It's not.
Okay.
People just don't know it's there. People don't know that there's a parking lot back
So
there.
let me just throw this out there. We had, you know how the rodeo used to take the Astro World parking and then they had shuttles that would shuttle people into
You don't
these
need a
events?
shuttle from the Lutheran church. You just need a
No,
sidewalk.
no, I'm talking about maybe pick another
There is
church
a sidewalk. There is a
like
sidewalk.
Fellowship or some of our First Baptist or one of these other churches that have big parking lots and see if because churches are always looking to get people in their parking lots so they can say, hey, there's a church here. So it might be, you know, just to reach out to a few of them to see if they might be willing, and then it'd be a lot cheaper to put a one-day mobility solution in
People
place.
park in front of my house, which is just directly north of the Lutheran church. So if my house is far enough for them to walk, then they can
Yeah.
certainly walk to the Lutheran
Yeah.
church parking lot. And they don't even, they're not even supposed to park in front of my house anymore, so.
At the Christmas tour, parade, all of that, that parking lot was packed
Yeah, people
at the
use it.
Lutheran church.
Yeah, people use it for,
It was packed.
I guess,
Stayed like that until the rain came.
they just start
Which
ignoring.
was
Once you get a
5 or
few
6.
people start ignoring that sign, then everyone else thinks they can do it.
Yeah.
So what are the solutions? Are we talking maybe going to the businesses? Are we talking mobility, hybrid type? You know, will you just let us use your parking lot and we'll get people? I don't know. What should we look at maybe developing?
I mean, I think that's a great idea for somebody like you, if you know you have an event that's going to outstrip your parking lot, you know, to go reach out to somebody like the church with, you know, in comparison, an infinite amount of parking on an
Right.
evening when you don't think they're going to be using it.
Well, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the city. Is that I don't have problems with parking. We don't book events big enough.
Are you offering some of your spaces?
I'm absolutely.
Not.
No, I'm absolutely offering if we're available. That would
So
not be.
the city's solution, like at Christmas time, was to run the shuttles from the MISD stadium.
I think that was a great idea. I mean, was it used though?
It was probably, I mean, we had capacity for more than did use it, but that's better than the
And
alternative.
that's a little ways away. I mean, someplace a little bit closer may be better, but you know, because people come into the city and they're looking for places to park. It's kind of like when Charlie Diggs
But
does
that's
his.
no different than fellowship. I mean, it's about the same distance as
I
fellowship.
would agree. I'm just throwing that out. I was just thinking church off the top of my mind, but there are other places. I mean, you've got Kroger, you've got where people are coming in from the city. So you've got these empty parking lots like Diggs uses. I mean, as long as you've got people getting shuttled and they can see it. Golf tournaments. I went to a golf tournament at the Phoenix Open, and they had parking, off-site parking all over the place, but it was so well signed. That's another problem, is there's not enough event signs. So invest in signs and mobility and working out one-day deals with these large lot owners who already have the infrastructure to pull it off. To me, that would be make a lot more sense than trying to create all these legal fees with attorneys and agreements and long-term leases, because I'm not going to do one of those. There's no possible way I would ever consider that. I'm just saying from a business owner standpoint. So maybe we just reach out to a few property owners and see if they have any interest in helping us out and come up with a number that would be fair within our budget.
Well, I think the ISD stadium worked out well because it was a free, the MISD was willing to let us use it for free.
Okay.
And there's not a lot of money left over. The 4 buses were, I want to say $6,500. I'd have to look, but it was expensive.
Yeah.
There's no extra money.
So for event, that satisfies the event parking for big events, but there's, I guess, some lack of understanding where parking is for the day-to-day stuff.
It's
which could
funny
be
that you should mention that because that kind of leads to item number 5.
the signage, yeah. Putting up signage and making sure there's adequate nearby parking for the day-to-day activity.
I was gonna say, I feel like, and I think that the downtown design plan bore that out, we don't really have a parking problem most of the time.
It's an event, yeah.
I think it's an event
And
problem.
it's and it's getting people to, the parking, we have parking in the city, it's just sporadic, and that's part of it.
And it's not even all events, like,
Yeah.
you've been to the water party, was there a parking problem during the water party?
I don't know, I walked to all the events, so. But I think, to be honest, I think ever since the Lutheran Church did put the parking lot in, I've had less parking in front of my house. And I think it is because people are just naturally going to a parking lot. They'd rather park in a parking lot they're not
Right.
supposed to instead of parking in front of my house. So I think that has actually been a buffer, even though it's not never explicitly or intentionally been that.
Has anybody reached out to Cheatham to see if we can use the 2 lots in front of us?
Generally speaking, I mean, people don't like grass lots. I worked the parking for the Mudbugs Festival, which was grass, and it was hard on the vehicles because unless it's absolutely flat with no dips in it, they're
There's some
only-
ways you can support it.
Yeah, and I'm a card-carrying member of that those lots, we used them all the time for overflow parking.
There's ways of stabilizing it, or you could throw gravel down. There's other
Good, but again, it's an
reinforcement
investment in
things.
somebody else's property for something that you
Yeah.
only occasionally use.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you're also getting to use that property, so you're paying that fee of improvement to be able to use that property.
I don't think it would be a big deal. I mean, I think there's got to be some kind of,
I don't think he's been super keen on that. I think you know well.
well, he might be super keen if somebody like Carol goes to him, because he really likes her.
Thank
That's our
you,
pen
but
pal. We send her out.
She
about
says
that.
no. I promised Carol I wouldn't speak a lot tonight.
He did. I got him in line.
Hey, Carol. Anyway, I don't know.
Come on.
Look, if you don't ask, you don't get, okay?
right.
There might be something that somebody has a bit of stroke with that might want to be able to reach out to some of these business owners and check. Hey, there's one right over there.
I think that one of the solutions that the city should consider seriously is to bifurcate the night property that we bought and turn the northern part into a lot that the city continues to own regardless of what it
How
does to
many
the southern part.
spaces can you put in there?
What's that,
Do you
about
have an estimate of that?
19 or 20 spaces?
Yeah,
West Law we're talking
if
about?
Cheatham would come along, you'd get 140 cars in there, easily.
Again, relying on a private landowner to not develop their property as a solution to a problem that we only have occasionally, I think is pie in the sky. I don't think it's a legitimate solution.
So you're saying we don't have a parking problem?
Huh?
Are you saying we don't have a parking problem?
No, I'm saying we only occasionally have a parking problem. We have an event parking problem.
So we have a signage problem.
Yeah.
We mostly
We
have a
definitely
signage
have a
problem.
signage.
We have a sidewalk, I think we have a sidewalk problem
The-
and a signage.
Streets in Montgomery don't get paved correctly. So what makes me think that MEDC can afford to do a parking lot when streets are not kept up in Montgomery? So is MEDC going to make sure that it's paved correctly
Yeah.
and
Get a
kept
grant,
up? Because the city
Be
can't keep their
responsible for that,
streets up.
yeah. Well, if it's only getting used 5 times a year, it shouldn't be that hard to keep it up. I mean, I still
Well, I'm
think
just saying.
we probably should go ahead and put a first, second, and third. We got to get parking, okay? There's no question
Yeah,
about
I
it.
disagree.
You don't think we need
The
parking?
plan that you should have gotten, I don't
I
see
mean,
one
when I first
right
moved,
now. had plenty of parking.
I'm looking at it, yeah. but
No, you're not.
This is
No,
not
you're
on this
not.
plan?
That is not it.
You're
That
talking about
is
the
not
downtown
it.
plan where they highlighted all the
What
parking.
is that
Oh, yeah,
thing
yeah,
called that
The
we have?
downtown master design plan, yeah, the big one.
Yeah.
So it's more of a signage issue, Carol, you think? And just-
Yes.
I would
People
be more
don't
comfortable
know
with what
where
Ryan
to
is
go
saying
and
is
park.
that
I'll
the
agree
side-
with that.
Not so much sidewalk, but because I think, where the big one is, there is a sidewalk from there, but it's a signage problem. We need to convince people that, parking is right there where they want to go is just around the corner, because it is.
It
Okay,
is.
so it's a signage problem, so let's work on the signage.
That's the next point.
I was going to say, are people comfortable moving on to item number 5?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move on from discussion on possible temporary parking solutions in and around downtown, with your permission, and moving into item number 5, update on wayfinding project.
Directors, the wayfinding project, one of the things that it does include is parking. And so this agenda item is just to give, or parking signage, but this is just to give you guys an update of where the project is. So late January, we had our steering committee kickoff meeting. End of February, the design consultant was on site here in town. Spent a couple days here with stakeholder meetings and a visual tour of town. And then just last week, we had a steering committee meeting to look at their analysis and a few of the designs that they've come up with. So we gave them a little bit of feedback, and their intent is in July to present to the EDC and the city council for an on-site meeting, so you guys get to see the work that they're doing and the options that they're coming up with for signage.
But
Okay.
everything that they showed, I was actually surprised that moving from the hideous green parking standard sign to some of the other ones that I would feel comfortable having more elite, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but
Polished.
Upscale.
yes, something in there,
Something in
but
there.
parking signs
Yes.
in downtown to make it clear that there are more parking
Yes.
sites available and how to get them, directional changes and that kind of thing. I think we can, without disturbing the historic nature of our downtown, make our parking much more
Yes.
accessible and visible.
That's
They
a
were
good
very
point.
knowledgeable
Yeah.
of how to place the parking signs in the downtown area and on the outer skirts
To get the eyeballs going
to
where they're
let
supposed to go.
people
Got it.
know where the parking is.
I love that. We'll focus on that. That'd be a lot, that's way easier than trying to go to.
We just really don't have the parking signs
Yeah, I agree.
in town.
Yeah, if you don't have a human standing out there telling people where to go, they don't know.
Yeah, they don't.
And they just want it, they're happy to go. They just need to know where.
They just need to
And I think we
know.
need to do more to make our parking a more visible point of our online presence as well. Kind of, so you're coming to Montgomery, park here!
Yeah, right, for sure.
Not that we don't care about the historic nature, but parking is such an issue that it needs to be a more clear and visible solution to people searching for
Well,
information
that
about
map with all
Montgomery.
the colors on it is a great start. I mean, all you do is show them that, and then everything where you see is red, that's where you park.
You are here.
Right.
You're here, yeah. So anyway, love that. Okay, well, that's a
So what
good
do we need on
solution.
that?
Do we need to make a motion? Do we just
No.
get it
No,
up?
that's just
It
for
was just an
information.
update,
Yeah.
yeah.
All
But
right.
it is going good.
All right, so if you're comfortable, we'll move on to item number 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
Consideration and possible action on canceling the regular meeting scheduled for June 19th, 2023.
Directors, as you see in the report, so Becky's going to be out of town for most of June. She's going to be out of town on the day of the meeting. I'm going to be out of town the first part of June on vacation as well. So limited staff, limited Becky, we're asking you guys to consider canceling the meeting. for next
Or if you want to pave a parking lot and end up in a terrible lease, then you shouldn't cancel it and you should put that on the agenda.
not here.
We're not doing nothing without you.
No, no.
I'll make a motion that we cancel the regular meeting for June 2023.
And I second.
I'll second.
It is,
Everybody seconded.
it has been moved and enthusiastically seconded that we cancel the regular meeting scheduled for June 19th, 2023. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Hearing none, all those in favor of canceling the regular meeting scheduled for June 19th, 2023, say aye. Those opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously, and we will cancel the regular meeting scheduled for June 19th, 2023. Item number 7, City Engineers April 2023 report.
With absolutely no preparation at all, I'm going to hand Chris the city engineer report, and let him give you the EDC updates.
All right, I will hit the highlights, the items in downtown, and then development, and then also transportation, since that's been a hot topic tonight. Your bunch of different water line projects going on to page 2, the downtown improvements project. So the surveyor finally completed the work. Both the water line replacement and the master drainage plan should be done in about 30 days. The sewer rehab project, they're substantially complete. We have a final walkthrough scheduled likely for next week for that project. And then the water line replacement will be coordinating with Ordura because that project isn't planned to go to construction until the design is complete, since everyone just got the survey back, a couple weeks ago. There's still some work there. All of the developments on page 2, item 41, or page 41 of y'all's report, plan reviews that are ongoing, the highlights, the Montgomery Summit Business Park is doing an expansion. Those plans were approved back at the beginning of April. The Pulte Group, the Montgomery Bend to the 80-acre Mayberry tract up on 1097. Their first section is getting near ready for approval, within subsequent sections also in review. Redbird Meadows is ongoing. That's the big camera tract on the south side of town. They're still working through some issues with the Water Supply Corporation that they have previously gotten out of. Lupe Tortilla, those plans have been approved. We're waiting on an amended plat for that. That's at Buffalo Springs and 105 on the southeast corner of the intersection. Same shopping center as Chick-fil-A, Panda Express, Starbucks. They are on hold starting with construction due to Entergy and being able to get a transformer. So them and Discount Tire, that's why you haven't seen movement on both of those projects. Is I think Entergy was telling them 10 to 12 months for a transformer to serve their site, so they didn't want to get started with construction until they knew they could have power.
Wow. It's unbelievable.
So we did have some inquiries of power going out. I've been apprising Mr. Palmer of specific addresses, and he's been putting those in. Does staff know of anything? Speaking of transformers, it just seems that there's certain areas of town, address-wise, that seem to have a transformer. Is that, you seeing that on the central to northeast corner?
Over the weekend with the storms, there were some powers again on the north side of town.
Right.
I think it could be attributed to a loose transformer. So Entergy was
Yesterday, right?
Go. I think that's when there's a lot of.
Yeah.
I get alerts every time something's rolled out.
We were in the middle of service and power went out, and we have a backup generator, but
Yeah.
we would have been, it would have been a horrific situation. I mean, to lose 500 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So energy, you know how I feel about
Oh, I
energy.
know.
I mean, my God, they could not be any worse.
Like a little song.
But how do we get around it?
You don't,
We just keep,
you just complain.
Just keep knocking
They
on it?
control that territory just like
I
school
mean,
districts do.
can I just ask that question? I know that we're still on the record. Who regulates who gets to come here, and maybe Chris knows, to be our energy provider? I mean, are we just saddled with a particular company, or?
I'm not an expert at this, but ERCOT Entergy is not part of ERCOT. And so wherever else you have the power you can choose between, is it CenterPoint, whoever your retail provider is, Entergy service area, which is not a member of ERCOT, you don't have that ability. It's still, I mean, even if you're in Harris County, you can pick your server, but the lines are still owned by CenterPoint or Reliant or someone else, but you can have the power to pick kind of who your retail provider is. But I don't know all the details of it, but again, somehow there's a section of Texas that's kind of East Texas, goes through this area and up to College Station, which is not in ERCOT and is part of Entergy zone, but That's kind of the high level.
So they're just, they're in perpetuity, that you can never get a
Same
new
thing as
provider?
Mid-South.
It doesn't really matter because you're buying electrons that were generated at the power
Right.
plant here or the power plant at Gibbons Creek or whatever, and they're coming here on the same lines that are maintained by somebody, a different company that we don't get to choose. And so whether you're buying it from somebody who buys it in the retail or the wholesale market this way, or they buy it that way, you're still getting the same electrons.
It's not the energy I'm concerned about, it's the equipment.
It's just
That's the
service
same.
side.
It's the
It's
same.
the same.
But why are some energy providers more adept at keeping their equipment up?
It's the same energy equipment regardless, because the line providers, the last mile, it's still a
So
service
why are they just
company.
named different companies, or are they just named different companies?
The wholesalers buy it, the company that you see on your bill, except for us, is a wholesale company that just buys it in the spot market or the long-term market, and then they slap their name on your bill.
Well, yeah, but that's your billing side of it. The real deal is the service side of it is they're owned by like Entergy Mid-South, and they've exempted themselves from a lot of these other things. Yeah, it's like Mid-South, if you have them, that's who you have. And be happy. So that's
You
just,
can buy your electricity from whoever, and it's out, that's still gonna
Well,
come
why
out
do
if
some
you're in the
people like
Mid-South
working
service
with
area.
Mid-South and not Entergy or Centerpoint? And I don't
Because your
understand.
service, it's just like the water distribution, they have a monopoly on the area. You can't have like.
Monopoly. Got it. Okay. That's what I was looking for. If they own, kind of like when Suddenlink was the only game in town.
No, not like that. So more like like the city provides all the water in the city of Montgomery, and Dobbin-Plantersville Water Supply Company provides all the water over there. And sometimes we adjust the borders in between based on certain things, but it is what it is because it's an infrastructure-based
Okay.
monopoly.
They put the infrastructure in, they get the check. Got it.
well, it's just a shame that we're slowing progress because somebody can't get to it.
Well, I mean, that's what
They've always been that way. Well,
Has it?
I've been 11 years that I know. They've always taken forever to do anything, so.
Yeah, they've always been slow, but
Guys loves to put a transformer. That's crazy. Okay.
all right, other items that I have, the kind of ongoing text dot stuff. So the Atkins Creek and 1097 drainage improvements, we're working through right-of-way acquisition on that. There's an access management plan that goes from the Grimes County line to Shepherd Street, so just right out here. We sat through a handful of meetings with them and reviewed some preliminary drawings. This is not until phase 3, and phase 1 isn't supposed to start until summer of 2025. So what that includes is I think it's an 8-foot or 10-foot wide shared use path all the way from right outside to the parkway on the east, or west side of town, I should say. 1097 and Buffalo Springs traffic signal, that TxDOT's finishing up that design, should be done in June, but they do not have expected construction timeline. The 105 in Buffalo Springs is the same thing, where TxDOT's wrapping up the design of those improvements, but they do not have a definite construction timeline on those.
On the access management plan, where does that stop again? Grimes
Shepherd
County line
Street.
to where?
Shepherd, so at Cedar Break.
So there's no raised medians?
There, it's phased in. So there's, when you get, at least the preliminary drawings, when you get further down, there's talks of a sound wall closer to the apartments, kind of that side. And there was access management along it with some raised medians in front of the high school, dedicated turn lanes. But it doesn't go all the way to here. I just can't remember exactly what that preliminary drawing had for the.
So do we need to make sure we're on top of that to make sure if there's any access management, raised medians, that we have the chance to beautify it?
Yep.
We got 3 years, 2 years?
The last items I have for you, Lone Star Parkway, the bridge repair at Town Creek, the county bid that project and awarded the project at their last meeting on May the 9th. So they're working through contracts to do that repair work underneath the bridge. And the Lone Star Parkway and Buffalo Springs intersection improvements. So this we discussed at the last council meeting. They're no longer going forward with the roundabout. They're going forward with the standard signalized intersection and improving Lone Star Parkway to add turn lanes on both sides of Buffalo Springs. So they are in the process, the county's acquiring the signal equipment. They don't expect to start until October construction by the time they get the equipment in. And we are reviewing the plans for the roadway work. We did have them move the intersection equipment, or excuse me, the signal equipment and poles out to allow for future widening turn lanes on Buffalo Springs. So if we do it, we don't have to deal with that in the future.
You know, those poles, the traffic poles, are they have the arms or are they?
They're mast arms. Is what they have proposed.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure thing.
All right. Executive session. We will be adjourning into closed executive session in compliance with section 551.001 of the Texas Government Code, in accordance with section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations of chapter 551 of the Government Code of the State of Texas. It is 7:12. motion after executive session?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we take no action after executive session.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we take no action from our executive session. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of taking no action from executive session say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously, and we will take no action. Board inquiry,
And then
thoughts, instructions for next time,
I'll
ponderance on the economy, classes in sign language. All right, I will entertain a motion for adjournment then.
I'll make a motion to
No, let Carol, she talks a lot.
I hear a motion and a second for adjournment. All those in